Another episode in the drama of the Donald Trump classified documents case. The focus? Trump's request to throw out some evidence that had been collected at Mar-a-Lago during the search. Now today, Judge Cannon heard arguments on two other key issues. The first one, another attempt by Donald Trump's team to throw out the entire case, and they argue that this guy, Special Counsel Jack Smith, is somehow unlawfully funded. Now there has not been a decision about that yet. Then cheered the prosecution's request for a gag order, arguing that his statements are inciting threats against FBI agents. The judge appeared skeptical about that argument. She didn't actually make a ruling, but she did chastise federal prosecutor David Harbach, saying, quote, "I don't appreciate your tone." That she would appreciate decorum at all times, but, quote, "if you aren't able to do that, I'm sure one of your colleagues can take up arguing this motion." Now, prosecutors argue the gag order is needed because Trump's rhetoric is so dangerous, and he's making false statements about the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago, saying that agents were authorized to take him out because of the standard language that's contained in the actual text of the warrant that does allow for the use of deadly force without saying that you ought to use it. Now, Harbach saying, quote, "The government is at a loss to conceive why Mr. Trump would say something so false, so inconceivable, or inviting of violence," to which Judge Cannon asked, quote, "Where do you see a call for violence?" Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, arguing what Trump said was purely political. Quote, "The attacks very clearly are against President Biden."
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We got to talk about one of my favorite stories in the news today, which is the story about how Judge Aileen Cannon is handling the classified documents case, because Jack Smith, his prosecution team, and the mainstream liberal media are losing their minds. They're literally losing their minds over this woman doing what I would define as good judging, right? I mean, she is taking her time. She's hearing all the arguments from everybody because, again, this is unprecedented, okay? We've never seen the type of political persecutions against the president that we're seeing today, and she's taking her time to make sure that she gets it right. The same thing that the Supreme Court is doing. Now, again, that's not what New York did with the hush money trial, and they rushed that because, again, their whole goal was just to get Trump convicted before the election to try to affect the outcome of the election. So they had a rush job with that, okay? And the mainstream liberal media cheered that on, right? They cheered that on as if that is how our legal system should work. That is not how our justice system should work. What you're saying that is happening with the Supreme Court and Aileen Cannon, I think, in my opinion, is more in line with how the system should work, okay? And Judge Aileen Cannon has once again pissed off the liberal media because of her putting Jack Smith in his place. Jack Smith thinks he can just waltz up in there and demand that we have a trial today. You got to have a trial today. And also, I want a gag order against Trump because he is putting the lives of FBI agents at risk. Which, I mean, there's no evidence or proof that Trump actually is saying anything that is a threat, which is what Judge Aileen Cannon told Jack Smith's team, is that I don't see a threat of violence. What are you talking about? Right? And I love that. Okay, I love it because this is what these people do all the time. Everything Trump says to them is a threat of violence just because Trump said it. But yet, if you actually look at what he said, it was not a threat of violence, right? Finally, we have a judge that's grounded in reality and saying that, yeah, you're just making this up, right? That, you know, your whole, oh, we need a gag order now because lives are in danger was bullshit, right? I mean, that's just what it was, okay? And the mainstream liberal media, they don't like the fact that Judge Aileen Cannon is calling out the bullshit from Jack Smith and his team against Trump. Take a look.
It's just yet one other example, but just, again, something just, it's sort of a real life moment to look at on how disconnected she purposefully is from reality is when she says that this man's threats can't impact other people's lives, when this man's threats and his words have led to Nancy Pelosi's husband being bludgeoned nearly to death in his home, has led to people melting pipe bombs. It's led to countless death threats, and people have had to get round-the-clock security. I mean, what she's saying is a lie. She knows that what she's saying is a lie, And yet she says it anyway from a position of a federal bench, saying that Donald Trump's threats can't cause any violence or threats of violence. Yeah, I mean, read the newspapers. That's a lie on its face. In fact, you could go to another judge, probably in that same judicial district, and they would take judicial notice of the fact that Donald Trump's threats often lead to violence or threats of violence.
Yeah, it's not speculation. We've watched it happen, and you just laid out all the cases in which it has happened. And that prosecutor from the special counsel's office said to Judge Cannon, urging her to act now on this gag order and not to, quote, wait for tragedy to strike. And she said, well, you've got to establish some actual connection between A and B, which I think you just did. So, Ryan Riley.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, these people are hilarious, right? The cope and the seething is hilarious, okay? Because Joe Scarborough accuses Aileen Cannon of lying when she says that, well, I don't see any threat of violence, right, from what you guys are presenting, okay, in regards to your reasoning behind this gag order. There hasn't been any FBI agents that have been hurt because of anything that Trump has said, okay? There has been no violence because of anything that Trump has said in regards to the FBI or anything like that, which, again, is factually correct, right? However, Joe Scarborough accuses her of lying, right? Lying, okay? To try to say, well, Trump is responsible for Paul Pelosi getting beat up in his own house. And it's like, well, there's no evidence to prove that Trump is connected to that at all. So you just lied, right? You just lied in order to try to say that the judge is lying, even though the judge is not lying, right? Because, again, there is no connection with Trump's rhetoric and violence in this country. Now, if you want to talk about connections between political rhetoric and violence, what you need to look at are the people on the left, okay? You need to look at your side of the aisle because Democrats have been inciting mass political violence in this country since Trump was elected. BLM, Antifa, the Roe v. Wade, pro-Palestinian riots, yeah, all because of Democrats inciting violence in this country, okay? But again, if you actually look at what Trump said, Trump made a factually true statement that, hey, yeah, the FBI was authorized to use force. I mean, they were, right? I mean, but that is not inherently a threat against the FBI, okay? Because Trump is pointing out a fact in which, yes, force was authorized. Now, again, what the left has done is that they have essentially spammed the Trump violent card to the point where, again, they think that anything that Trump says that they disagree with, that they don't like, they say, well, it's violence. So therefore, it should be censored because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take away the president's free speech, right? This is what they're trying to do. And again, it's just nice to see a judge actually stand up to the nonsense, okay? The Trump derangement that is coming from the media and from Jack Smith, okay? Because again, this guy desperately wants to get a trial, okay? Whether it be the January 6th one or the classified documents one to trial, right? He wants to get it to trial, okay, before the election. However, it looks like that's not going to happen, which is, again, why MSNBC is fuming against this woman to the point where, again, they're trying to paint her as, well, this is an example of a bad judge because she is in the bag for MAGA, right? She's a MAGA judge. She's on Trump's team. But, you know, a good example of a good judge would be Judge Merchan.
Exasperation can happen in courtrooms, but of all the people in an American courtroom to be concerned about tone, in a hearing that's about Donald Trump's potential threatening of FBI agents nationally, something that most judges have never, ever had to consider, federal judges, they've never had to consider their duty to protect FBI agents nationally. And her worry is the tone.
So that is one of many, many, many signs that she is not up to the task here. I have seen many judges in high-profile matters and seen how they comport themselves. We all just watched Judge Merchan, who is, that is sort of the platonic ideal of the model.
Yeah, so once again, you see the mainstream liberal media saying the quiet part out loud, okay? The judge that they think is biased towards Trump, oh, well, she's terrible, okay? She is not somebody that is a model judge, okay? Because she's doing things that we disagree with, okay? However, Judge Merchan, who, again, donated to Democrats, okay, and anti-Trump initiatives, this guy is clearly biased, okay? He is in the bag for Joe Biden and Democrats. Okay, we know this for a fact that he's a political judge. He's a political operative. Oh, well, he's the ideal model. Okay, I mean, more judges should be like him, right? Again, these people, they love telling you the quiet part out loud. They do not believe in a fair justice system. No, they believe it's totally fine to go after your political opponents. And if you are a part of the judicial system and you're not willing to help them go after Trump, then, hey, you're a bad judge, okay? You should be removed from the case, okay? They're going to scream and cry for months because you are taking your time to figure out what is going on with an unprecedented case being brought against the president of the United States. Again, it looks like that Judge Aileen Cannon is not going to go along with Jack Smith's arguments for a gag order, which she shouldn't, because ultimately at the end of the day, Trump did not threaten anybody. What Trump is saying is not a threat of violence to the FBI. You just have to be a dummy to interpret his words in that way. But again, this is where we're at in 2024. Okay, anything Trump says is a threat of violence, according to these people. So that leads me to this interview between Jonathan Turley and Megyn Kelly, in which Jonathan Turley is going to talk about the potential for Jack Smith to be thrown off of this case due to some funding issues that could be unconstitutional. At least that is what Trump's team is arguing, okay? And she's considering these arguments, as she should, okay? And again, this has the left upset because she's doing her due diligence.
Yeah, I wrote about this today because a lot of the criticism was about that hearing. And the argument from the left, including an MSNBC legal analyst, gave Judge Cannon a lecture saying, "Stay in your lane, girl. You should never have given a hearing. Other courts have ruled against this." And yes, other courts have ruled against this, but there's no controlling authority for Judge Cannon. This has never gone to the Supreme Court. So what she's doing is normally viewed as good judging. She's allowing the party to make the best argument, including, by the way, 2 former attorneys general who are there as amicus, and to create a record so that this can be appealed potentially to the Supreme Court. And what they're arguing is not frivolous. And MSNBC, CNN are portraying this like it's some kooky idea. It's not. The Constitution says clearly that you need to be appointed or nominated and then confirmed to be U.S. attorney. You have to either have that type of confirmation or you have to have an appointment pursuant to a statute. Neither of that is present here. The Independent Counsel Act expired. And so what the Department of Justice is saying is that despite the act expiring, they can basically circumvent the need for confirmation in the Senate. And this is precisely why the framers wanted confirmation. Would Jack Smith have been confirmed as a type of special U.S. attorney? Not sure about that. You know, he was reversed unanimously by the Supreme Court. That would have bothered a lot of senators. But the question is, why have this system where to be a U.S. attorney, you've got to go through vetting, you've got to be not just nominated, but confirmed, or Garland can just pick a guy off the street according to his claim of authority. He could pick anyone. He could pick his barber and make him a special counsel, and you can't say anything about it. That doesn't sit well with the language of the Constitution. So while the odds are against the Trump team because of these previous arguments, those judges summarily dismissed these issues. I mean, most of them did not grant a hearing. They decided on the pleadings, and Judge Cannon is simply allowing oral argument to occur in this case. And yet everyone is attacking her for doing it.
Yeah. So again, what he's saying is that there are constitutional questions about whether or not Jack Smith is legally allowed to be doing what he's doing, okay, or constitutionally allowed to be doing what he's doing. Now, Judge Aileen Cannon, like Jonathan Turley said, is being a good judge, okay, and doing due diligence to say, okay, let's hash it out. Let's have the arguments because this is not something that has been addressed by the Supreme Court. So there's no superior body that can basically guide my decisions. Okay, I have some of my peers that have, made decisions on this, but again, the Supreme Court still hasn't essentially heard anything like this yet. So let's create a record so that if it is appeal, then the Supreme Court has all the information that they could need or that they could want in regards to making some type of decision on this, right? And again, what she's doing, again, is doing what good judges do, but because it's not moving fast enough for the left, because she's not doing a rush job, a slop job to get the president convicted, like what happened in New York. Oh, it's a problem. Oh, she's such a bad judge. She's so inexperienced. Which, by the way, if this woman was black, okay, or even her same color, because she's a so-called woman of color, right? But if she was a Democrat, if there was a D by this woman's name, and Republicans were saying the things about her that Democrats are saying right now about Aileen Cannon, like, for example, when Republicans criticize Ketanji Brown Jackson being appointed to the Supreme Court by Joe Biden, right? You guys remember that? It's racist. It's sexist. You're attacking a black woman. Now, again, most of the Republican arguments were about some of her rulings that she's made before in the past, right? Her actual record. Now, the left, their arguments against Aileen Cannon is that, well, she's just not going along with what we like, right? And therefore, she's unqualified. Which, again, if you call a black woman who's a Democrat unqualified, they'll say that you're racist, right? You're a sexist. But if you do that to an immigrant-born Colombian woman who happens to be a Republican, oh, well, that's fair game. That's just legal analysis, right? According to MSNBC and CNN. Yeah, so, again, I think what's happening here is hilarious. The mainstream liberal media is trying to pretend like this woman is doing something that is completely unprecedented for a judge to do, and that's just simply not the case. They're just mad because she is actually being a good judge, okay? That she's doing her due diligence. She's making sure that the president actually gets a fair trial, if it goes to trial at all. I mean, who knows at this point? But again, it's just so funny to see these people get so mad that she doesn't want to rush this case into court before the election so that they can get what they want, which is a conviction. And again, this is why they are currently actively trying to undermine her, okay, and undermine the Supreme Court, which is something that they argued just a month ago after Trump was convicted in New York that you shouldn't do, right? You shouldn't undermine the courts because you don't like their decisions, right? You shouldn't question them, okay? You shouldn't question whether or not they're politically biased. This is what they were saying. But again, just a whole month later, all these people are doing is fuming about the courts, doing things that they told us that you couldn't do when they got their way, right? It tells you everything you need to know about how these people operate, okay? If they agree with it, oh, well, it's fine. It's totally fair. If they disagree with it, oh, well, it's rigged, okay? That the judge is in the bag for Trump. The Supreme Court is corrupt, right? We got to overthrow the whole system. But again, when they win, you got to respect the system and you got to respect the outcome, or else, again, you're a dangerous person. Let me know what you got to think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.